I'm cooked.
Welcome to the craziest show on YouTube, which is the devlog series for my indie game. Dream Fortress is a survival roguelike where you kill hordes of aliens while gathering resources, crafting items, and building fortresses. Sorry it's been like 8 months since the last video, but I was busy working on the game, working on the custom engine that I built for it, and trying not to go brain dead from staring at my computer all day. I started working on Dream Fortress a year ago because I wanted to put everything I have into one game. I've self-published a dozen little games, but now it's time to YOLO. I haven't done a ton of 3D modeling and animation, so I'm going for a simple low-poly art style with lots of custom rendering, procedural generation, and post-processing effects. In my last video, I wrote a custom 3D renderer in Rust and Vulkan that integrates with the Bevy game engine. But in September, I rewrote the entire engine. But wait, since when did indie game developers write custom game engines? Usually they don't because they're already drowning in years of programming work. And I used to use Unity myself, but as everyone and their grandma knows by now, vibe coding works really well. From my testing using Claude Code and Codex, AI generates more accurate code under 3 conditions. First, when it only needs to generate code and it doesn't need to use a visual interface like the Unity editor or the Unreal editor. Second, when it has access to the engine's source code. And third, when the engine's source code is relatively short. I'm sure these won't be problems in the future, but for now, I'd rather avoid these problems by making my own minimal 3D engine that only does what my game needs and doesn't have a visual interface. It took a few weeks to get a basic version of my engine working by following this 3D graphics textbook in Vulkan and combining it with C++ libraries. There's lots of open source C++ libraries for game development, so that's why I chose C++. To be clear, I use AI to help me code faster and sometimes to generate placeholder art assets. And the AI generated assets are going to be replaced before launch. My engine is all code, which is not just better for LLMs, but also easier for me. I'm not saying my engine is better than Unreal or Godot, and it's got way less features and no community behind it, but it's great for my workflow, because using visual interfaces to develop a game like Dream Fortress, which has lots of real-time procedural generation, usually slows me down, and I like having full control over the engine. At the end of the day, players don't care about the engine. They just want to play a fun game. Writing this engine myself was partly my own preference, partly for easier optimization and custom features, and partly because after the game launches, I want to make the engine free and open source and make fun and educational content about real-time 3D graphics algorithms. The game was originally first person, which saved me time because I didn't have to make a player character model. But I wanted to add lots of enemies and I found that third person was better for wider field of view and also being able to see behind you. I'm not much of a character artist, so I started with a generic male character, found some animations on Mixamo, and then I made him orange because he's a tasty little snack. The terrain is fully procedural, inspired by Sebastian Leg's tutorial series. I originally had smooth slopes, but jumping onto different levels of flat plains felt and looked better than walking up slopes, and I also prefer to keep the movement simpler without adding a separate mechanic for climbing. At different heights, the color of the terrain changes, and the height also affects what environment objects can spawn. The environment objects are all placed procedurally, but the individual models are just regular 3D models. I used many stock assets, but I plan on replacing most of them later. The natural resources you can gather include trees, coral, mushrooms, and different types of rocks and crystals. To make the environment more full and alive, I added procedural grass, which are just these green triangles which sway back and forth to give the impression of wind. I copied this shader from ShaderToy, pasted it into Claude Code, and boom, it's in my game. The water uses the pipe method to simulate waves, and the water shader has Fresnel effects, skylighting, and specular lighting, which I also copied from ShaderToy. And I used ray tracing to add reflections. Hold up, there's ray tracing in this game? Yeah, and the implementation closely follows this technical talk by one of the developers of a very good game called Glade. Traditionally, 3D games calculate lighting on objects as if it comes directly from a source, when in real life, light bounces around the scene. This causes effects like reflections, ambient occlusion, shadows, and color bleeding, which used to be faked with complicated techniques but can be simulated much more realistically and with much simpler code using ray tracing. The idea is to shoot rays from the camera and have them bounce off objects based on the object's material properties. This gets slower the more bounces you do, so new NVIDIA graphics cards have dedicated hardware called RTX cores for doing ray tracing fast. Lower-end devices like the Steam Deck don't have RTX cores, so I wanted to see how efficiently I could implement ray tracing without RTX cores. This is the main innovation that Glade did in their renderer. Another aspect I really liked about Glade is how you can create beautiful and unique things with simple mouse gestures, and I wanted to take this intuitive building mechanic and add more gameplay. To recreate this feeling, I first needed a way to give the player access to a top-down camera, where they can easily use mouse gestures to manipulate the terrain and build structures. So I added a drone mechanic. When you use the drone, your camera follows the drone up into the sky, and then you can build different structures that you've unlocked and also raise or lower the terrain with the hoe tool. In my first 2 devlogs, I had freeform wall building. This makes the building mechanic much more complicated for the player and also makes the game lag if you draw too much. So even though it looks and feels good, I went back to building on a grid. One of the cool things I lost when I removed freeform walls was the procedural bricks. The walls used to be composed of the same brick duplicated many times, because this renders much faster than using many different 3D models. But I also took advantage of this with the enemies. Currently there are only 9 different enemies in the game, and I'm looking for a character artist to help me replace the stock assets and make more. For now, by using instance rendering and culling to avoid rendering the enemies that aren't on the screen, I filled the dead space by having thousands of them in the world at once, inspired by games like Vampire Survivors and Megabonk. The clouds in this game are volumetric, which means that it's darker and less transparent the more clouds you're looking through from the camera's point of view, and guess what? I found the code on Shader Toy. The character animations are pretty complicated actually. A character in a 3D game typically uses something called a rig, which is like a skeleton. The rig makes it much easier to animate the character and determines how the surface of the mesh deforms as the character is animated. The only characters that don't have rigs are the spiders. The spiders are completely procedurally generated using 17 cubes and completely procedurally animated using inverse kinematics. I also added level up, crafting, and inventory systems so you get stronger and your item and builds get stronger as the game progresses. The game is meant to be played in a single session and it changes every time. I'm working on adding more variety every time you play. I haven't added anything persistent between runs, but I'm thinking about it. I wanted to add more characters that the player can command to do things like gather resources or defend fortresses, but I haven't even designed the main character yet, so I hacked this feature in by adding a cloning mechanic. Use the drone to build a cloning chamber, and then make a clone by standing inside the chamber like this. Now, you can make lots of clones and assign them to different structures like the turret or the mining drill, or send them to the meat grinder and turn them into food. But maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to turn your children into food. So, I added a farming mechanic. After leveling the ground with a hoe, you can plant some seeds, craft a bucket, fill it up with water, water the seeds, keep them safe from aliens, keep watering the seeds, and eventually they will grow into a delicious potato to keep you and your clones healthy and strong. I thought it was cool to also make the cloning chamber the respawn point when you die. A lot of survival games like Minecraft or Valheim make you craft a bed as a respawn point, but for my game, it's more elegant to make the cloning chamber multi-purpose. And now that we have a healthy supply of potatoes and an army of clones, let's put everything together into a gameplay trailer. I've just put up the Steam page for Dream Fortress, so go wishlist if you want to help me out. And let me know what you think about the trailer. I'm not really known for making trailer videos, so any feedback is helpful even if you hate it. This very epic cover art was done by my friend Eduardo. Go check out his work on ArtStation. There's tons of work to do and the game is going to change a lot, so I'm not going to announce a launch date yet. I'm not releasing the game until it's competitive with what's in the market right now. And that's going to take a while, but I'm working as fast as I can. The big game design problem I'm working on right now is how to add online PvP when I don't have millions of dollars to spend on marketing to keep the player counts high at all times. This was the main problem I had when I was making multiplayer Fortnite maps 2 years ago. Even if the map is good, it was hard for people to get into good lobbies because the current player count was unstable. I don't think PvP is necessary for Dream Fortress, but I've got some cool ideas that I'm really excited about, so I'll leave that for the next video.